Quad 66. This is a video I've been meaning to do for a little bit here, but I've been getting distracted, or I don't know, maybe not entirely distracted, but just not staying on top of the videos like I want to. But what I want to talk about here, so these are the new Gemfan 2512, and they're just tri-blades. So this is again kind of in that same format. So they've got the 2-inch size, I think they're 2032s in tri-blades, and then in this 2.5-inch size they've got the 2512. So that's a really shallow pitch. And then, you know, obviously in the bigger size we're used to flying the 3018s or 3016s also in the tri-blade. But anyways, a while back I kind of made a point in a video, or at least I said in the video, it's like I don't hate tri-blades. I just don't like flying them. Like, they haven't I haven't come across one that I like flying. So I like the 3018 much better than the 3016s, but these I'm actually really liking a lot. And I tried them out first with these Brother Hobby. So these Brother Hobbies are 1103, they're 8000 kV, and they're actually pretty nice motors, with the one fault that the stranding, the copper wire that they use in the motor is very, very thin. And the junction to where I had, unfortunately, out of the 4, I had one dead on arrival, because where the copper winding comes into the motor, it's just really thin and it broke, and there was not enough there for me to salvage it. I couldn't go in and solder a new motor wire on, so unfortunately I had to pull another motor out. So I paired this up with the so these are the Sky Stars 1103 1000 kV motor, and I'll talk about those some more too. But with these Brother Hobby motors, I would actually go and get more, but it looks like Brother Hobby, it seems like they're not available anymore under the Brother Hobby brand. So they're not like selling them on the Brother Hobby store, and like when you search around, I don't see them very easy to find, which is unfortunate, because they're actually a pretty nice motor. And I think part of the reason this motor wasn't as popular when it came out was because, so these are the regular 4-hole mount, so it's M2 on 9mm, but when they first came out they were on kind of a funny pattern, and I think it was a 3-hole mount 9mm M2. I think that's what it was. Might have been slightly smaller, like the what is it, 1.6 on an 8.5. But anyways, they're nice little motors, really responsive, have, not crazy heavy. I smacked them around quite a bit and they haven't died on me in that sense, but it's just that one little flaw. They're not the cheapest, but they're not crazy expensive either. But the problem is I would get more of these, but the only place I can kind of find them now that I think is consistent is on the Avant site. So, and they're branded under Avant. So like Avant has used them, I think, on their 2-inch and 2.5-inch builds, and so they rebranded them. And those are pretty nice quads. They've been reviewed by, like, if you go to Nick Burns and also UAV Tech, they reviewed a couple of their quads and liked them. And so I wouldn't be opposed to buying them from there, but it's a little pricey. The shipping's kind of a lot. So for it to be worthwhile, I'd have to buy like 2 full sets, and then also it'd be kind of mismatched with the blue bell versus the red, and not a big deal there. But I'm concerned that if Avant stops using them, then they're going to be just disappear altogether. And I'm just kind of like annoyed with always being on motors that you can't find anymore. Like, I've got this set here. This is my well, actually I have a couple of backups. These are those old AMAX 1103s. They're actually pretty nice motors. They don't have quite the responsiveness I like. They're efficient, but these Brother Hobby motors, some things are still kind of like, these are supporting, I don't know if you can see that really well. Sorry about the lighting. Felt like it's nice outside. I just wanted to do this outside. But with these Brother Hobby motors, let's see if you can see it. Yeah, so they've got nice tight air gaps. They've got, curve-ish magnets. They could pack some more copper winding in there. There's some air, like there's some empty space, but overall, pretty decent little motor. But I like the responsiveness of them, and they fly nice. It's just a shame that they're not like readily available anymore. So going back to these let me kind of skip over. So the way I've been flying this a lot is, so this is on that B-Brain brushless board, and then I had to throw one of these Sky Stars on here. But the way I've been flying these props a lot is actually on this build here. So this is a Flywoo board, and it's built up on my Warpig 120 frame. And I've got these Sky Star 1103 8000 kV motors. And this is, for me, a very, very, very dialed in kind of setup for, in terms of being right sized for the space I fly in. So when I fly this guy, I like it. So this is slightly bigger motors, 1202.5s with, you know, these are the Nazgul 3020 props. Also fly a lot on the 3018s. So if I fly this version, and this one's on a Lowell 3S, I also have it built up, or actually it was this, but I pulled off those, the Apex Racing 1202.6s, which I was flying on 2S on this. And this is the right performance for the space I'm flying in. I do like, you know, the way this slightly bigger build, you know, with 3-inch props flies. It's just, it makes my yard, like, it's too easy to just kind of explode through the yard. And also the 3-inch props, just, there's so much more like inherent, I'll phrase it in a good way, there's so much more inherent stability that it just makes my yard, like, it feels small. Even though it's like such a small difference in prop going from, you know, a 3018, in this case it's 3020, going from 3018 down to the 2512, this is the right size prop for my space. And definitely they give up some top end speed when you do kind of big punch outs and things like that. When I'm like trying to shoot over the roof, I've got to like stay in the punch out a little bit longer, stay in the throttle a little bit longer. But it just, this combination just works really, really, really well. And so what I actually want to do is just kind of find a go-to motor. I'm actually going to go and get some more of these Sky Star motors. The only place I can find them really anymore is on the Sky Star store on AliExpress, and unfortunately they've also bumped up the pricing. They used to be able to get them for like almost $6, now it's more like $7. But there's the, you know, slow shipping and things like that, and these motors are certainly not perfect, but they just, they're sort of the cheater motor, because these motors are so light that I can, and they perform so well that I can overlook a lot of stuff, a lot of their flaws. So with this setup here, so these, I'm kind of bouncing back and forth a lot, I apologize on that, but the props, so I feel like we finally have a decent prop. These HQ 265s, these were okay, but the Gemfan, it's, this blade design is just as superior. It just is a better performing blade. And although in general I prefer the bi-blades, this blade, the actual blade itself of the prop, is so much better than the T65 in my opinion, that I like it on the tri-blade. So of all the 2.5 inch props, all the 5mm props, this is my favorite prop, even though it's a tri-blade. And I'm like, you know, over and over again, I like the bi-blades, but this is the first time I'm really liking a tri-blade. And I've been flying them for a while. I only bought one pack because I wasn't sure about them. I was like, tri-blades, meh, I'm not, you know, I'm just not, you know, tri-blades just don't usually do it for me. But in the 3016s, I really don't like those. It's kind of funny, I just don't. These I do like, and I've been flying them and enjoying them, and they fly well. And so I can get a nice, so on this build here with a 300 milliamp battery, I can easily get 4 to 5 minutes, and particularly if I use the better battery. So on those little 300 milliamp batteries, there's a couple different flavors. There's also 350 on the 2S. The ones to get are really the G&B 2S with the XT30 plug, and they're the ones that are rated like 80, and I forget what the other upper number is, whether it's 160 or something, but they're the highest C rating. So G&B, like, you can't really compare C ratings across different brands, but within G&B itself, I think that C rating really does work. It really does tell you this battery is better than that one, and the ones to get are those. I think the XT30 plug, especially on a build this small, is overkill, but You know, really, I think the other plug that's probably the next best is going to be the BT2, and you know, the batteries already come with XT30, so I think I'm just going to call it a day on that issue and just kind of stick with these. But yeah, so these props, I really like them. They're nice and responsive. They've got a good amount of grip. They don't hang up in the air too badly, and they pair really well with 1103 motors. I don't know why I keep hearing it over and over. It's like still, you know, people are saying like use the 1202.5 or the 1202.6 or whatever, you know, slightly bigger motors on these 65 mm props. I don't get that. You don't need it. These motors handle these props just fine. And I like less weight. I like less weight out at the corners. And so that's part of the reason why these SkyStar motors, I'm willing to tolerate the downsides, because they are the lightest, like 1103, and they have, you know, kind of nice construction in terms of the curved magnets. They're pretty notchy. They've got a good amount of copper in there, and so you get a really good, you know, efficiency and power out of them. They handle the props well, and they're so light that when you throw them at the corners, you don't get as much of that, you know, I'll call it stability instead of calling it sluggishness, but, you know, you don't, from having the mass out at the corners, you don't get that excess stability. So that's a really nice combination. The downsides of these motors, the reason I can't just like across the board recommend them though is, one, you got to order them from AliExpress, SkyStar store, which is annoying. Two, they've got a clip up top, and the bell is so small, and it's a soft aluminum that when you put these props on, you cannot twist these props. You got to just like push them straight on while supporting. Well, actually, you don't have to support from underneath because it's got the C clip up top, but you have to push them straight down, and watch out with your thumb, because you can see that sticks out above the hub. So if you're pushing straight down with your thumb, that's going in your thumb, that's going to hurt. So you need to do something else, like use some paper towel or something to give you a little padding. But you want to push these straight down, and you want to cut them off if you're going to use them with these motors, because if you start twisting, that shaft is going to spin in that bell pretty quickly. That bell does not have enough substance in there to overcome the grip that the prop hub has on the shaft. So yeah, these props, at least on this first kind of generation of these have enough grip that you don't need any prop screws on most of these. I gotta try them on these, on the Emax 1103, see how it flies there. But anyways, I'm liking this enough. I do think, so this is on, the reason I have it on the 120 millimeter frame is because that's what I had kind of built up. I just pulled off those 1202 motors and went ahead and, you know, just threw those motors on so I could test them out. But I'm really enjoying it. And the frame size does make a pretty big difference in how it handles. I do want to try it on a 110 millimeter frame, but I actually like this enough that I'm thinking about maybe making a Warpig 115, and versus just leaving this on the 120. I think taking the frame down just a tiny bit will give you just a little bit smaller footprint, so like getting you into slightly smaller gaps, and then also just giving you a little bit more responsiveness. Part of the way I got a ton of responsiveness out of this is I kind of cranked up my feed forward, and I'm actually going to post the tune. I'll have the tune, my diff. So the diff also, when you look at my diff also, you gotta realize I've got my board rotated and doing all kinds of crazy things like that. So only take the parts of the tune that you need. This tune is actually pretty good. If you're like I think Patrick Clark hates like feed forward. He hates the way Betaflight feels like too robotic, and he likes Emu Flight. So if you don't like that, the thing to do is take down the feed forward some, because I've got it cranked up here to give me that like quick hyper responsiveness. The tune's pretty good. You can actually probably take down the filtering just a touch bit more to get the prop wash handling a little bit better. There's still a little bit more prop wash than I'd like, that little chatter. And I think I can just like take the filters down and get that, you know, responding a little bit quicker and clean that up. But it's close enough to where, and it's safer, you know, safer running with a little bit more filters. Okay, so the one thing I want to do, so I really like this. Again, I might do a 115 millimeter frame. I'll probably try it on the 110, see how that feels. But the 110, I think, I don't know, it might be just a little bit squirrely. It might be too, so I've really got to try it out on this build. You know, obviously it's a different build in terms of the weight distribution with the 16x16 stack. I do, interestingly enough, have my all-in-one 16x16 finally on the way. It's shipping. I ordered some from AliExpress. You know, it's kind of an interesting board. So yeah, it's a 4 gram all-in-one, 2 to, you know, they say 2 to 4S, but I think it's, you know, realistically they're like 2 to 3S, and I think it's like 12 amp ESCs. And so it'll be interesting. And obviously it's, you know, it's pretty cheap too. It's made with, like, you know, what I've been finding out is they use recycled parts, so they take the recycled parts off at something else and then throw them on there, and so maybe reliability issues. But anyways, I want to fly these on 2512s on this build, but I haven't done it yet. These props are holding up pretty well, better than I expected. They still, like, if you get into see if you can see this one, it's got a nice little munch on it. See right there, like, you know, that was kind of a rock strike, or maybe my fence or something. A little heat on there, you know, with the lighter, and that'll straighten right out. I have bent these. I'm bending them in multiple places. They both bend at the hub and also middle of the blade, so that actually tells me I like them to fail at multiple places. It means that no one spot is overbuilt. So for example, on the bigger props, the 3018s, you're only going to bend them in the middle of the blade. You're not going to bend them at the hub. I mean, you might, but and that to me tells me that hub is a little bit over designed. I know some people prefer it only to bend out here, because if you bend at the hub, that changes your balance significantly. And so trying to fly it back with a bent prop, if it's bent at the hub, that's going to create way more vibration, and you're much more likely to fry an ESC or something along those lines. Or not fry an ESC, but a motor. But I feel like this is actually a really, really well designed prop. I'd really like to see it in a bi-blade, and probably in a bi-blade, maybe just a touch more pitch, but not much. But anyways, I feel like finally we have the 2.5 inch prop after all this time. And it's unfortunate that I think you kind of seem like people are going nuts with the builds of, like, you know, now it's 3 inch 3S, and then now 4 inch people are building all in one, you know, like, why? Just settle down, and I don't know, maybe you've got bigger spaces to fly in. And certainly this isn't the build that you want to go and take into huge places, but if you want a small space and you got a lot of power and handling and precision in a small space, this is excellent. I think that covers a lot of it. A couple other things I've been doing. One of the things I've been looking at is, so on some of these builds I've had, like, I like to fly my micros, these little small guys with a lot of D. They just do better. They seem to need that D, but the D term, excess D term, creates fair noise and heat issues and whatnot. And I was going to try and see if I could calm down some of the electrical noise. And so what I did is I bumped up, so these Flywoo boards come with, I think, a 220 microfarad capacitor. Let's see. These, this is the bigger one. Yeah, so this is a 470, and these are FR. These have a slightly higher, they're supposed to be a little better than the FM, like quality-wise and how much capacitance you get out per size. But so on these, this is a 470, so Flywoo comes with, I think on here I've got the 220. So you can see it in here, that's a little capacitor in there. And so it's a 220. And so I was kind of wondering, like, did Flywoo just not give you enough capacitor, and is that why I see some of the noise? And one of the reasons I like these Flywoo boards is because they have black box. You can actually look at that stuff. So I did some experimentation, and so on one build, and I was flying these both on very similar motors, and so it was really just kind of changing from larger capacitors. So this is a 470 to the 220, and I didn't see any difference in the black box noise. So I didn't see that or my video or anything like that. So I didn't see that the larger capacitor, the 470, made any difference whatsoever on these light little 2S builds. Actually, even on 3S too. But so I'm going to go back to, just for a little weight savings, when I update stuff, I'm going to go to just stick with the 220 microfarad capacitor for these, 2S builds. So that was kind of one of the things. So, changing topics now, so no more drones. We're talking about, well, I guess there's still some drones. So, what's been distracting me, and I wanted to get this out in this, I'm doing this out in the sun, because hopefully you can see this. I really like the way this paint job came out. Can you see that? Maybe you can see how it shines and picks up the things. Anyway, so this is a foam board build, and it's a 510 millimeter wing, and I haven't put any electronics in it, but I've used a lot of the techniques, the foam board techniques that you see in Flight Test. So Flight Test is kind of famous for making their foam board speed build kits, and what I was trying to do was, in this plane too, this plane is kind of funny. I was just experimenting. I was just messing around. I got some Dollar Tree foam board, so it's like literally $1 a sheet. So this plane has all of, I mean, the paint costs something and the hot glue costs something, but this is a $1 frame, granted, airframe. Granted, my time into it is a lot more than $1, but sorry, hopefully that's scratching. I've been trying to be mindful of not making a lot of noise, because I know people are saying that I don't talk so loud. I don't talk loud enough, and then when I make noise, then it's kind of blasts their eardrums. Hopefully I'm not making too much noise for you, but anyways, on planes. So Ryder's really been into planes, and when, similarly, like, you know, with my quads, I don't want to have to go far to fly them. I want to be able to fly where we are. And so we've got, in our neighborhood, we've got these little parks, and they're just community parks rather than the city parks, so there's no rules there that I know of, I hope, of, like, you know, like if you're flying out in Mesa, you know, technically it's like you're not allowed to fly the RC. But what I've been trying to do is get planes that we can just fly where we can get to easily, and have nobody be upset about it. And this plane, these are great, these little Yashin or Volantex Mustang. And so part of being like, you know, people not getting upset about it is one is just safety. Like, one, I want a plane that's safe, that, you know, God forbid something did happen and you lose control and it ends up somewhere you don't expect it. Like, realistically speaking, is it going to cause major harm, or is it unlikely to cause major harm? So these Yashin are great from that perspective. These things weigh nothing. They have very little motor mass or power in them, and, you know, it's a pretty harmless little thing. And also it's so small that that it, you know, it looks like a toy. Nobody sees that and gets like worried about it. People see that and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that thing's actually flying as well as it does. And we've never had anybody get upset about it, versus, you know, we've got a bigger build. It's a micro mini, or they call it the tiny trainer, Flight Test tiny trainer, and that's like, so this is a 400 millimeter wingspan. The other one is a 1,000 millimeter wingspan. And that thing, you know, I get pretty self-conscious, and if there's anybody out there at all, we just don't fly it. This one, if we have enough space, we'll just fly it wherever. But some of the downsides of this is that it flies on these little toy grade controller. We did just get a multi-module, so I'm going to try and bind it up and see how it flies on a real radio. But with this, one of the things, it's great if you want to fly angle mode. So that's like kind of full, it's the auto leveling mode, meaning you let go of the stick, it goes to neutral, versus regular acro is, you know, when you let go of the stick, it holds whatever angle it is. So the flight board, or the receiver in here, it has auto level mode, and it has the stabilization. So for example, if wind hits it, you know, it kind of fights back against the wind. But it doesn't have that stabilization in acro mode. It's like, it's all or nothing. You're either in level or you're got no stabilization whatsoever. And this is only 400 millimeters, weighs nothing. And so if you're trying to fly acro, meaning you can do full like rolls and things like that, then anytime the wind hits you, it's pretty tough. And also it's really small. And with the speed that, this is actually pretty fast for how small it is, but with the speed that it flies at, it's hard to kind of keep your eyes and oriented on it. So it's like you're doing fine, and then all of a sudden you're like, what's going on? And you know, spiraling into the ground. So I was hoping to be able to I was thinking about, and I'm still going to try it, I think, but putting in a Horizon Hobby or E-Flite UMX brick. I think E-Flite is a house brand of Horizon Hobbies. That's what it seems like. I think that's the case. But so they've got their UMX bricks, and what a brick is, it has a receiver, 2 servos in it, and your speed control. And the nice part about the UMX stuff is that you've got 2 modes where it's got this Acro Stabilization. So if, for example, if wind tries to hit you, it's going to fight back against that wind, but it still gives you full acro. And then they have what they call safe mode, which is your auto level mode, your angle mode. So on safe, you let go of the stick, it comes back to center. Obviously Ryder's pretty young. He really likes flying in that level mode because he's not really that interested yet. Well, I don't know, maybe he won't get interested that way, but he's not really that interested yet in terms of like really challenging himself in terms of flying without auto leveling. What he really likes is coming in and doing really smooth landings, like doing like real smooth flying, and it just works a lot better when you're auto leveling. But for me, I like the challenge of, you know, flying without auto leveling, and this one is just squirrely. So when you have no stabilization whatsoever, so I am going to try and put a UMX brick in there where you can go ahead and you know, have that feature where it's like stabilized, but it's acro mode still. And we'll see how it does. Considering also on this size, I'd also want to fly this on 1S and convert it to brushless. The annoying part is none of these UMX bricks have like a brick that'll do that. Their 1S are all brushed, and then if you go brushless, it's 2S. The one exception is they've got this other plane. It's called the Ultrix. It's a wing kind of design, delta wing, and it's got 2 motors, differential thrust. So that's not something you can just go and plop over directly into something like this. Maybe you can with some reprogramming or something, but I'm not sure. And I don't feel like dealing with that and learning a whole new ecosystem. So you can do brushless on this, but then you got to do an external ESC, a 1S ESC, and I found some videos. You can control that ESC through channel 6. And so it looks like it works, but it's kind of like a hassle. And also, this airframe's not really designed for kind of building, and so it's kind of like, you know, it's the conversion is just not super straightforward. So with that, I don't want, so we just got the UMX turbo timber. So it's a STOL plane, so it's a bush plane style plane. It's a 700mm wing, and that one actually, it flies great. Like, I can fly that thing really easily in the acro mode. Ryder loves flying it in the level mode, auto level mode, safe mode, and it's got flaps, so you can fly it really slow too. But it although I think people still perceive it as pretty harmless, it is big enough to where it doesn't necessarily look like a toy. So this to me just looks like a toy. The turbo timber, I think maybe when it's in the air, maybe it does, because it shrinks. You know, obviously when things get in the air, they shrink. But I kind of want something just a tiny bit smaller, tiny bit bigger than this and tiny bit smaller. So I started just experimenting with film board, and that's where this guy came out of. And so I decided on this one just a 510mm wing, and that was simply because those the film board comes in a 510mm width. So on the it's longer, so you know it's slightly longer than the Wonder. It's rectangular, so in the shorter dimension it's 510mm, and that just seemed like a nice little length to do the wings. And with one of the things I want to do too is I want to keep this lighter than the flight test stuff, and I'm going to try it too. Flight test has and I like the Warbirds. I just like the way they look when they fly. But Flight Test has a 600mm wing Mustang, and so I'm going to try that too and kind of compare them. But I feel like this 510mm might be kind of that sweet spot that I'm looking for in terms of it's just big enough to be able to like kind of orient on it and a little bit more, you know, acro friendly, but still small enough to where this very much looks like a toy size kind of thing. Like I don't think anybody, you're just like, somebody gets grumbly, just like actually show them, hey, this is what I'm flying. They're gonna look at this and be like, oh, okay, you know. And so some of the things I wanted to do versus the flight test one is really figure out how to get the weight down. And so part of what I did is on the wing, they have a lot more material here. They also they keep the paper on both sides. So I was doing some things to kind of like get this to just decrease the weight. And same thing with my fuselage also, where I've got the paper all peeled off. So this is just single thickness, you know, throughout. And you can probably see here, my alignment is not perfect by any means. I didn't make a jig or anything to get the alignment right. I literally just kind of hand molded and winged it. And although it's not straight, I was actually surprised. We kind of balanced it out by putting a little weight in the nose and tossing around like a chuck glider with rider. And lo and behold, this thing like flies great when you're just testing how it flies with, you know, as a chuck glider. So I'm actually optimistic that this may actually do well. So to tie this back into drones, and it does, surprisingly enough, is I think the motor that I'm going to try on this, so I have these are the original FPV Cycle 1204s, aka the RCN Power. And the nice part about these is you can still find RCN Power still makes these. Actually, a lot of people make these in 1204, and so this is 5,000 kV. And I think on 2S, with a 4-inch prop, a low-pitch prop, the trick I need to do is I need to keep it safe and friendly for a 5 amp ESC on 2S and fly it with the batteries we already have. So we already have a bunch of little 300 milliamp batteries, and that's what we were flying the Tiny Timber on, not Tiny Timber, Turbo Timber, the UMX Turbo Timber. And so we've got a bunch of these batteries, and I've got these motors, and I hope that this will work. 1204, 5,000 kV on 2S, that we can keep it low enough on a low pitch 4-inch prop that it doesn't fry the ESC, because if I do that, that'll be sad bears, because those little bricks are pretty expensive. They're like 50, 60 bucks. But that's my plan. Mount that up in there. I gotta still fashion that out and see how it goes. But anyways, I thought that was I was shocked how good this came out. I didn't get everything right. Like, you know, the belly of the Mustang, obviously I have a gap there because I was trying to figure out where to fit the wing, and just doing it hand, like I was just taking a knife and cutting it to get it to fit. Like, this was not pre-planned. This was like on the fly. I thought I was just experimenting, and actually turned out into a pretty good airframe. So promising stuff to come there. And I think that was a pretty solid ramble right there. Oh, the reason I wanted to do this outside, and I think I already said that, this just really, that paint job looks cool. But anyways, nice Quad 66 colors. I think those are their colors anyways. And until next time, cheers.